Hello and welcome again to Talking Devils, your largest independent Manchester United podcast. You're here again with us on episode 4 of Won the Lot podcast. Again, you're with me, your host, Harry from Fan Owned United. Again, joined with the gents, Steve and Peter. Steve, a lifelong United fan and has been at Old Trafford with his season ticket there for over 25 years. Peter also a lifelong fan and is a match goer as well as a football author. I myself have got a season ticket in the Stratford end, so we obviously like to give our views and opinions, by going to the games as well as what we see on the television. Of course, if you're following us today on YouTube, please feel free to drop some questions and comments. We'll always reply to them throughout the show. Or if you're listening back on an audio podcast after this, please do subscribe on the platform you're listening to. If you drop some comments as well on YouTube after, we'll always get back to you. Right, so unfortunately not too many positives to talk about, more so things to dissect this week based on the two performances. I think it's something which I kind of mentioned last week and didn't give too much attention to, but I kind of mentioned how Liverpool were keeping us honest. I think at that time they were 7 points behind with 2 games in hand. 4 points behind with a game in hand. And now, obviously, they've tightened that up with being only 1 point behind us. Although we do have those games in hand, they're obviously now keeping us honest. So I think the first and main thing to talk about is our away form, of course. It is a bit of a surprise that the away form is so poor versus how well we have been playing at home this season. Again, in getting into the detail of this, and something I was quite surprised by is that we've only won 1 game against the top 12 teams in the Premier League this season. Within those results, there was a draw, obviously recently against Spurs, and then we drew against Chelsea early in the season, and the 1 victory was against Fulham. So, Steve, we'll start with you this week. So why do you think there's such a big difference between, the form at home where we've only lost 1 game in the league versus, the pretty terrible form away?
I think it's got to do with the support. Obviously, the players love playing in front of the fans at Old Trafford. They, rise to the occasion quite a lot, even if we peg back. And, maybe they rely on the fans too much. They're professional football players. They, as Peter referenced in the last podcast, when the atmosphere grows, they tend to shrink. So, if we're playing against a team who give the crowd, their home crowd, something to cheer for and something to really cheer them on, it seems like we wilt, and that needs to be looked at. Now we need to get some sort of psychologists in. We need to get some sort of help for these players, because it's unacceptable. We are where we are because of our home form, and it's clear that the players are tired. That they're knackered, but it's not really an excuse that it's such a drastic kind of change, as you say, from home to away. There's clearly something mental there, as well as physical. There are a lot of teams who are playing twice a week, especially at the moment. It's becoming a little bit more condensed. City are playing twice a week, every week, and yes, they've got a bigger squad than us and a lot more quality and depth, but they have players who are playing every week. Kevin De Bruyne, Erling Haaland don't shrink under pressure, and definitely don't shrink under a loud noise when they aren't at Old Trafford or aren't at the Etihad. So, it really needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think, obviously you mentioned mentality and being able to deal with pressure before the show. It's something that we're all talking about, Peter especially. So yeah, Peter. I mean, do you want to expand a little bit on that?
yeah, it's kind of Groundhog Day at this point. It's funny, like the 4 episodes. I just think it's kind of the case. It feels like since the League Cup final, every single United game's almost the same. Like you see the exact same issues every single time we don't win, and it almost feels like the season ended at the League Cup final, and we're kind of waiting to like, okay, what's the next step in the evolution? Like I don't think there's much more to come from what we've seen. Like we're not going to get better than we were at the League Cup kind of stage. And yeah, the mentality is a huge concern. And it kind of feels like Stephen was saying, like psychologist needs to be brought in. It's almost like a post-traumatic stress thing from like last season of like the minute things go wrong, everything goes wrong. And they all just like collapse. And they're kind of like a state of like status. They can't like move. They're like, oh, we've seen this before, and we collapse because it happens so often, like that, and like every game is very predictable at this point. Like West Ham and Brighton were similar in a way of started quite well in the first 20. We don't get the goal, and then it's almost like, well, we tried all our ideas, we've nothing else left. And especially yesterday, like it just at no point felt like we were going to get back into that game. I was watching it with my housemate, and we were about to like, well, there's like 60 minutes, like and there's half an hour, and there was 10 minutes or so added on. It just never felt like we'd score, and I think it's a lack of belief, and yeah, just a lack of like proper character and winning mentality. And I think it is like it's been the story of United for the last 10 years. Like I saw, it's actually 10 years since Fergie announced retirement, which is rather grim but fitting today. But it is that thing of like there just isn't that like never say die attitude, and I think it's just easy. Like you said, like, it's much easier playing at home, and away from home, I think it's just ingrained in them now. Like they just don't believe they can come back from these positions, and yeah, it almost makes a mockery of like we have the longest unbeaten away run. A lot of these players do under Ollie, but it came in COVID when there was no fans, so it just has been literally the case since football came back from lockdown that they just can't handle any sort of pressure. So it just raises serious questions, and it's mainly the guys who've been there the longest that have the biggest issues, like the De Gea's of the world, Luke Shaw, times Martial, Lindelof, Maguire, and so on. So yeah, it's a long-term issue that isn't going to be fixed in one season, and I think at the moment it's just being laid bare what that problem is.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, I think that's one thing that kind of disappointed me most, especially yesterday. I really did expect a reaction after halftime. Surely, I think either way, Ten Hag must have got stuck into the players. He must have tried to get some sort of message across, but as soon as the second half started, it was almost as if West Ham were the team that needed the reaction because they were the ones that were on top. We literally would give the ball away every time we were playing out from the back, and they were simply just counter attacking after counter attack, and they were the ones creating chances. I mean, from what I saw yesterday, I think we actually started with good momentum for the first 20 to 25 minutes. I know we didn't have a chance that hit the target, but Bruno hit a shot just wide of the post. Anthony, again, similar, hit the crossbar with Anthony again after that. And I think Bruno again hit the post. So we definitely started quite well. And unfortunately, we're obviously not a kind of channel here that likes to scapegoat or manhunt. But unfortunately, after the De Gea era, which was a massive one, I just felt that it really kicked the kind of sting out of us. I don't know if you guys saw the picture or the shot of Rashford. He had his hands on his head, looked straight at Ten Hag. Ten Hag almost didn't want to look at Rashford, put his head down. And that, I don't know, it just seemed to kill us. And then, you're talking about all these things like mentality and pressure. It's something, again, that has repeated, like when we were at Sevilla away. West Ham, they then created a bit of atmosphere, similar to, like I was saying, at Sevilla away. They got a goal against us quite early on. And then, it seems like the players seem to shrink a little bit. And yesterday it only seemed to be, when we got to the last 10 minutes, was there some sort of reaction? And, obviously Ten Hag has done a fantastic job, and no way am I saying that, he doesn't know what he's doing. But I think for the first time, maybe yesterday, I was just questioning slightly his tactics and also the fact that the changes he made, but also when he made them. I guess the first one is Weghorst, playing him as a number 10. I think, pretty much definitely by the end of the first half, everyone knew that it wasn't working. Again, I can't remember one of the players, I think it was Rio or someone made a comment today saying, your number 10, you need them to be working in a creative kind of space, making chances, moving forward, something that Weghorst doesn't offer. And usually Ten Hag's comments are pretty straightforward, but I pulled one from yesterday on Weghorst. He said, you get the idea, because of his height, his heading game, it's a matter of long balls and second balls, and Wout is very good in these situations. So, I mean, he's saying these things, but the way we play doesn't actually match that, because we don't play long balls to him, we don't play any crosses to him, and he just seems to be a bit of a dud. So, I mean, overall, on Ten Hag's kind of approach yesterday, Steve, what did you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Out of our front four, 3 of them are out of position. So, what else can you say? There's a reason why we're not scoring goals. And yes, of course, it's because we've not got a proper top number 9. But Rashford prefers to play on the left, Bruno in the middle, Weghorst up front. he probably doesn't want to be coming and dropping deep and getting the ball and turning and running, because he can't do it and he's never done it. So it is something to question. Again, you've got Sancho, Pellistri and Garnacho on the bench who can come in. If you're going to play one player out of position, put Rashford up front, put Sancho or Pellistri or Garnacho on the left, and then Bruno in at 8. And I can almost guarantee you're going to get more chances. So he went with Weghorst. I thought he was going to play him up front because they have quite physical centre-backs. So maybe he could occupy them a little bit to give the guys in behind a little bit more space. But it didn't happen. And you think at half-time it's a gamble or a risk that hasn't paid off at all. He's clearly going to do something at half-time, and yet he goes and gives them another 15 minutes or 10 minutes in the second half. And that was a bit of a concern for me. I watched it with my dad at his house, and we were saying when they all came out, we were like, "Is that Weghorst still on the pitch?" Like, we just couldn't believe it. So, really, really interesting to see, and I wonder what the thinking was, because he certainly doesn't head a ball, and as you say, the style of play that suits him, or you would think would suit Weghorst, we don't tend to play. So it's concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of what was not Ten Hag like yesterday is as you mentioned, he didn't make any changes at halftime. Like, I was expecting, him to come off for Sabitzer. Sabitzer, I think, has been in a good run of form, although he's scored not too many goals recently, but he has, when we have been playing well, he's been the kind of focal point of the attacks in the middle. Or, like you said, really surprised that he didn't bring on Garnacho at all yesterday. The mannequin Martial didn't really do much or have too much of an impact when he came on. Neither Sancho too much.
He actually missed a sitter, Martial, didn't he, from that Bruno corner? Right, he fired it right at the front post, and he missed.
Yeah.
He missed from a yard out. Didn't get any contact on it.
The chance just before that, he showed like the glimpses of talent he has, but still, it was like, shoot across the goal, don't shoot straight at the keeper. But yeah, like, fully agree with what you're saying there, Steve. Like, I thought you kind of given up on the Weghorst experiment because he hasn't been playing that much recently, or you bringing him on, and like, he was so poor when he came on against Brighton. He just gave away a foul. Like, he touched the ball like once or twice. And like you said, like bringing in someone like Wout Weghorst is one thing, but also bringing him in and meaning you need to switch around all your other players to fit him in, and especially Bruno, who's like our hub of all our creativity, and like that midfield of him, Eriksen, Casemiro, like is very strong together. It just made little sense, and like I was saying, like it just felt really predictable that like this isn't going to work. The Weghorst experiment, it's finished, and it feels like it's a blind spot to him. That it's like it must be the Dutch thing. It's like he's like his son or something. He's like, I have to give him games. Like he isn't part of the future. He's not helping us right now, and it'd be better off just leaving him on the bench. And like you said around Palestri, like it feels like we need a spark in the team, like some like pace and somebody's going to go at someone, because like you look at the lineup out yesterday, Weghorst no pace, Bruno, Casemiro, Eriksen not much pace, Anthony's not rapid, and it's all on Rashford to kind of have a bit of thrust and so on. So I think like a Palestri, and then I just thought it was odd that Garnacho why was he brought to London if he wasn't fit to play any minutes? Maybe like the atmosphere and so on, like a tough game to come into, but it just felt a little bit strange. And it's the first time this season I've really like questioned Ten Hag, like kind of like tactically, like that was strange. Like I don't get what you were trying to achieve there, and especially the thing you said about the headed ball. Like Weghorst can't win any headers. Like it's crazy. He can't. He's like a Peter Crouch. He's like a worse Peter Crouch. Like he's tall, but he can't jump, so people can jump ahead of him. So yeah, like I just don't know what he was thinking. And even bringing on Fred with 5 minutes to go when you need to go, you're just like, that's not going to work. He'll give the ball away. He'll do something. It all felt a little bit like, well, we'll just, like what he did at Newcastle, kind of like, we'll go to 3 at the back. We'll just kind of throw some things in. And ultimately, like, nothing came of it. So, yeah, it was another bad day at the office.
I think, something definitely needs to change in the away performances. I think just going back to Brighton, it was almost a kind of identical performance to the semi against them as well, to be honest. I mean, second half, we kept on dropping, almost as if it was almost like we were playing a top European team, or Man City, or someone like that. Like we were allowing them to have the majority of possession. They were passing it very well from the back. And to be fair, in the cup semi-final, we were quite lucky, to be honest, to get through on penalties. Maybe we had a bit more of a resilient performance. We looked a little bit more tired in the cup semi-final and created a few more chances. But I think in the league game, we weren't really there at all. And I mean, obviously, we're building towards next season now. Surely Ten Hag must look at this and think, if we're playing Brighton away, or even at points yesterday, West Ham away, we can't shrink like that and then just allow, the opposition to have the ball. Also, it kind of reminded me of Arsenal away earlier in the season when we had really good spells and we were, drawing with 10 minutes to go. And then all of a sudden, we just let them hold on to the ball and we kept on dropping defensively. We kept on dropping our line further and further and further. So I think that definitely needs to be addressed. But another kind of main point that, I've kind of picked up on and surprised about, something we've talked about a lot, is basically where our goals are coming from. It's almost pretty surprising and shocking that we're in fourth spot still with a +6 goal difference. Mm-hmm. I mean, a +6 goal difference is a team that should be in kind of, middle of the table. Those are the kind of stats. And
we're 9th in the league in terms of goals scored. Even Fulham have got more than us. Fulham have scored 50 goals and we've got 49.
Yeah.
So City have scored 40 more goals than us.
Yeah, I think another mad one is we haven't scored more than 3 goals in one game this season in the league, which is pretty mad. Like you think, like sure, like there's been a lot of games, to be fair, like Everton at home. We should be putting cricket scores on teams occasionally. There's certain games you should be putting cricket scores on teams, and then there's other games you're like yes, I felt like we could have played for 10 hours and we wouldn't have scored. There just isn't that like we're going to get a goal, and it's all been mostly on Rashford. and the goals kind of dried up for him a little bit. And it's pretty like their last 10 league games, he's only scored 8 goals. So, and like half of them came against Everton, Forest, who are like relegation strugglers. So, yeah, really, the fear is like we don't like it's just inch over the line and somehow close top 4, and then we can move on. But if we don't get top 4, you'd be wondering, like who are we going to get in? What's the budget going to be like? And it just will really rue. We'll look back and laugh, maybe like, oh, we could have should have won that game. But if we don't get top 4, it really will be like you'll be like cracking the whip at some of these players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, looking at the next and last 4 games that we've got, luckily only one away game, which is Bournemouth away. Then we've got Wolves, Chelsea, and Fulham. Fulham just they beat Everton today, right? 5-3. No, sorry, Leicester. Leicester 5-3. So, I mean, even though they haven't got anything to play for, seems like they're still, knocking in a few goals. And the slightly lucky thing that we have is, all of those teams don't really have too much to play for. There's none really in the relegation battle. Nor anyone is fighting for European spots. So what do you guys think? Do you think there is a good chance, a comfortable chance? I mean, it should be to get the Champions League spots. I mean, it would be a nightmare to throw it away now. Do you see any potential hurdles on the horizon?
We've been saying this for the last 2 weeks, haven't we?
we thought we'd be sitting pretty, being like, 4 games to go, we'll just relax. I think I said I wanted a relaxing May. It's been anything but. And the main hurdle is ourselves. Like we're not playing, like you said, like Brighton, West Ham, these are not, and like Brighton just lost at home 5-1 to Everton and letting the goal after 34 seconds. So like these aren't like they're all right teams, like, but we're not playing like Arsenal, City, Liverpool. It's teams you should be beating. So it is the fit. I'm just like, you can't really trust these players. I kind of thought we got to a point with Ten Hag that you could trust the team, but I do think like the absence of like Martinez and Varane were a big part of that. They're obviously gone. So yeah, I don't know. It's the home games, the fact these teams have nothing to play for. But one, I always say playing Wolves it's always sticky. Who knows what Chelsea team will turn up, and Fulham, it would just be our luck if Andres Pereira and Dan James denied us Champions League football, because they did it many times by playing for us, but we rather fitting if they did it to us. So it's game by game.
I think Pereira's out for the rest of the season. So
that's the best news we've had all week, which is when we're thankful that Andres Pereira won't be playing against us. Things are getting a bit tight, but it's hard to just take it game by game. I think if we beat Wolves, if we beat Wolves, then you'd be all right. And like, if you are picking an away team to play, it is Bournemouth. They're safe. They've got an 11,000 seater stadium. If you wilt in that atmosphere, like, you're finished. Like Chelsea just won there, so it really should be just close the job out. I do think a big important factor is we have a week off this week before Wolves, and it's our first one since like the end of October. So you'd hope that recharge the batteries a little bit. Maybe some changes. Like maybe I don't think he'll start Garnacho, but like I said, give Pellistri a run. Someone who's just going to go at players, as opposed to like there's been a lot of standing around the box, passing, shimmy, pass backwards, and then like Rashford tries to have a shot. There isn't anyone making any runs or going in behind. We're quite easy to play against, especially when we go behind.
Absolutely. I mean, the point about Pellistri, obviously you mentioned him before as well. One thing that I've just been a bit surprised about from Ten Hag is he's had the faith to give Garnacho the minutes, but not necessarily Pellistri. But when Pellistri has come on, he's shown the same sort of attributes as Garnacho. So it has been a bit of a surprise, the amount of minutes he's got. And you're right, I think he definitely should be getting some time, because when he has come on, he's definitely looked much brighter than, say, for example, a Sancho has. So I'm just, again, a little bit surprised by that. Steve, that's just another thing I noticed, when I was saying about the lack of goals, looking at the tally, top scorer Rashford, obviously 16 league goals and 29 in all competitions. Bruno has 6 league goals. He's the second top scorer with 11 in all competitions. I mean, where do you think in the last 4 games these goals are going to come from? And we can't rely on Rashford, I guess, too much going forward, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to have to take some of these bigger players stepping up. They have to know now that these games are must-wins, considering Liverpool are 1 point behind us. Yes, we've got that game in hand. So, yeah, it could be 4 points. So we can maybe afford to lose 1 game, but we have to win 3 games still. So I said at the start of or halfway through last week's show that we had to win 3 games, and we still do, having lost 2 games. Ten Hag has give the guys 2 days off, I think, this week, which should hopefully give them a little bit of rest. Hopefully they're not going out and doing anything they shouldn't. So, Bruno, he's going to have to start putting away these chances that he's missing. He's having a lot of shots, not getting many on target. So all you have to do is hit the target.
Yeah.
They've passed back to De Gea and he's thrown it in his own net. So, for me, that's equal to the Taibbi.
Yeah, he's had a fair few Taibis this season in general.
Yeah, big time. And we just need to get the ball on target. And, you never know what will happen.
Yeah,
again, another one of Ten Hag's comments was, we want basically De Gea to stay on and sign a new contract. I think, although I'm not the biggest fan of him based on his mentality, I think Dean Henderson may be someone we call back from Forest to give him a bit of competition. Because if we're in a position where we have to extend his contract, it doesn't make sense to buy another goalkeeper. I mean, Peter, what do you think about that?
At this point, I don't even understand that. Like, it's chatting like we have to keep De Gea. Like, we don't have to offer him a new contract. It can just be, thanks for your service. It's time to move on. I think everyone knows it's time now. It's been time for a long time, and just a clean break and everyone moves on, because like that's going to happen again next season. Like, there's no doubt. The guy, he's so brittle, and like also like regardless of letting in that goal, like he passed the ball twice to West Ham players at the start of each half. It instantly creates panic and anxiety in the team, and then he also from 1 or 2 corners crossing. Like, he played for a foul against Antonio. Like, that easily could not have been given. Like and then he also tried to do it for Souček for one of the 2 minutes later, and the foul wasn't given. So, like, the fact your keeper can't even come and claim the ball and he's trying to rely on a referee to get him calls, like, it's just not going to cut it. And I think another issue with De Gea, like there's a lot. We could have done a whole episode on De Gea, but he never leaves his line. Like, he doesn't even push out to get the ball. He's always in his box. So it means the defenders have to drop back so much, and we're instantly playing like 5-10 yards further back all the time. Mm-hmm. And that often means like we're just playing in front of teams. So yeah, I never thought I'd say I wanted Dean Henderson and his cap and goals again, but I think even like Keylor Navas, if Forest go down, like he'll be there on a free. So, like,
he had a great game against us, didn't he?
Yeah,
we could have Nottingham Forest's first 2 keepers next season.
I'd have whoever a third choice is, I'd have him too. But we don't need to buy like the next keeper for the next 10 years. We can just buy someone who's better than De Gea for a season, which isn't going to be that hard. Like, there's definitely keepers you can pick up who can pass a ball and can play the way Ten Hag wants to. I hope he's just giving him lip service, because he can't come out and like go through him. Like, he's never done that with any of our players. So yeah. I'm hoping this is all just keep ticking over till the end of the season, and then
see, from my perspective,
nice announcement and he's gone.
From my perspective, I don't know if he's thinking a little bit of the longer game, where instead of just giving him a 1-year extension, if you can give him like 3, and then come maybe even January, okay, maybe not January, but the summer next year, you can try and move him on for a bit of money. That's the only logic I can see behind it.
That's the Ed Woodward logic of
that's the only thing. I'm not saying it's something I kind of would be behind, but that's the only thing I can think of, because again, for me, it just makes no sense to keep him on. Like I said, I've always been a massive fan of De Gea. He's, like you said, he's put in good service, but and he's a great shot stopper. There's no doubt about that. Credit where it's due, but he's cost us games now in in Europe. Yesterday, very fragile when kicking the ball out. I mean, we've talked about it so many times. This problem has started from the beginning of the season against Brentford, and yet he still refuses to kick it long. This again builds a lot of pressure, like we were talking about different circumstances when we go away from home. You always hear the opposition, kind of whatever, shouting and screaming and taking the mick whenever the ball's passed back to him, and really fragile in areas when balls are being crossed in corners. So there's slightly more negatives than positives now. So
I think,
yeah, definitely need for. I think there's a need for him to move on. Just another point, I guess I wanted to talk about was the only two major, or one silver lining you mentioned, was the time that we have to recover, which is quite important because when you're playing weekend, midweek consistently, I don't even think there's that much time to train. I literally think there's a game, you have a rest, and then light training, and then back into another game. So at least we can have a bit of tactics, and I think Ten Hag will get into that. But the second one is, like we've spoken about before, Ten Hag always talks about standards that players need to be matching, and what his message is, and players who not necessarily are reaching those standards. And it may have been a good opportunity over the last two games for Ten Hag to actually see who he wants, what he wants, and who he can move on in the summer. What do you think about that in regards to him restructuring? Do you think that he'll move on quite a few players, or do you think he'll have to try and do it in phases?
I think it just depends on the budget. I think it depends on the owners. We're talking about De Gea, but if we've not got any money or any proper money next season, we're going to have to spend it on a striker. That's our main budget. Then probably a central midfielder, and now the goalkeeper is becoming a real priority. But to make three top signings in a summer where we don't know who's going to be in charge is going to be very difficult, unless as part of their buyout policy early on, potentially if Jim Ratcliffe comes in, for example, he could maybe have said, if the process takes longer than the summer, if you accept my bid, I'll bankroll the transfers before the buyout's been completed, maybe something like that. But we've not got. It doesn't look like at the moment, and going off the last few years, the funds to be able to compete for a top striker, a top central midfielder, and a keeper to replace De Gea. So it just looks difficult.
Yeah. What do you think about that, Peter? And I guess, what do you think about the Glazers kind of holding off and kind of elongating this process of the sale? It's obviously having a direct impact on what Ten Hag can prepare for the future.
Yeah, I think it's hardly surprising. Like the Glazers, they could push throughout the summer. Who knows? I thought Gary Neville's tweet on after the game was a bit ridiculous. The way he was like, he didn't mention anything about De Gea or any of the players. He was like, "This is the Glazers' responsibility." At a macro level, it is. Like, obviously, every party knows decline about obviously goes back to the top, but he was almost like taking all the responsibility and accountability away from the players, which has been a major issue for so long. Like, if a player plays badly, you can't just point at the board being like it's his fault. Like, Joe Glazer wasn't in goals yesterday, so I don't like. Who knows what happened? He probably would but who knows what will happen in the summer regarding signings? But just what I'm saying again, like, just don't keep De Gea. Like, don't give him a new deal. Don't elongate this process as well. And yeah, I think he knows. Ten Hag, he's no fool. Like, he knows exactly who's up to it and who's not. Like, there's a reason why he packed in Ronaldo quick instantly almost. Maguire, a couple of games in, gone. it is just he's stuck with De Gea at the moment, and he's stuck with certain players because we don't have the depth and we haven't been able to speed and sign him in January. And there was so much to fix when he came in that this is always going to be a long process. Like it'll be 2 or 3 windows before we get rid of all the guys we want to get to, and that's even with like actually being run well. So yeah, the intro. I wouldn't be shocked if like Eric Boy's in the squad next season or like a Tellez, just because we can't find a buyer. So yeah, I think there's just as long as we can get rid of a few, like we did last summer. I know they all went in free contracts, but it is almost like at this point, like addition by subtraction, just getting rid of lads who've been part of the mass failures, been part of like the bad mentality, and just getting some guys in who like buy into Ten Hag's way of thinking. Because I think all of his main signings, you can feel like these guys have a bit of fight about them. Whereas the guys who've been there for so long at this point, it just feels like it's just time to go. Like just get rid of them.
Yeah, and I guess another main concern that we've not really spoke about, and I guess we can end on, is between now and the end of the season, the only potential player that could come back from injury is Varane. Otherwise, we've got what we've got, and under just under a month's time, we're going to be playing Man City at Wembley for our FA Cup final. And I'll be honest, being quite honest and frank, I'm starting to think if we keep on putting in these performances, there's a threat not only of winning the cup final, but also being embarrassed, versus what is a very good, in-form, fantastic Manchester City team at the moment. And Ten Hag, I'm sure his main priority at the moment is just winning a couple of games to get that top 4 place. But in the back of his mind, he must be thinking, seeing the performances of the last couple of games, like, how am I going to set this team up against City? I can't really go toe-to-toe with them. I can't really sit back the whole game because they'll create chances. I mean, what do you think his approach may be against City? What do you guys think about that?
Get on his knees and pray at this point. I was saying earlier to my housemate, I was like, I'm actually kind of annoyed we're in the FA Cup final because I kind of want the season to end. I'm like, just get top 4 and let's just move on to the next stage and get some signings. It's a bit like, obviously, love to stop City potentially winning a treble and so on, but it just feels like we're going to go and get absolutely massacred there. And that's not even because they're better than us. They obviously are. But because how brittle our mentality is, like you could see us going down that FA Cup final after like 30 seconds, like De Gea, like just kicking it to Haaland. So at this point it's hope and pray because the way we're looking like we're going to be like stumbling into that final in dreadful form, and they'll have won the league and probably the Champions League final as well.
Yeah, and I think it's that extra bit of sting it might cause that we have the potential of stopping them to getting that treble, and if they beat us, obviously, that might be slightly more painful. But how do you think Steve, potentially Ten Hag might set up to try and approach that game?
I think he'll probably set up the way he wants to set up, like he has been all season. I don't think he's going to change to go 5 at the back. That's just inviting pressure. So I think what he should do is get the runners in my opinion. Get as many people who can cover as much ground as possible. I don't think it's a game for Eriksen. I think it's more of a game for Sabitzer or Fred with Bruno. As long as Bruno stays deep and just doesn't hang out next to Weghorst holding his hand up front, like he was against West Ham, there's a reason we didn't get any of the ball in the midfield, and that's because Bruno was stood up front. There was a point earlier on this season, maybe even a month ago, where he was playing some of his best football from deep because we didn't have any real other attacking midfielders to come in. But the game against Fulham, he was deep and dictated play. And if you can get those 3 midfielders quite compact and stay compact, and maybe look for a counter attack with Rashford and Garnacho and Anthony, then we might have some joy. So I think it's stay compact, hit it long. They've been playing at the moment with 3 at the back. So if they're still playing with 3 at the back. I know they play with John Stones in the middle at the moment, but he can always drop. So I think it's just about staying compact and trying to go for the counter.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a feeling he'll start with Martial like he did at the game at Old Trafford, just purely because just to try and get him to maybe win the second balls, get the ball turn and move forward. But also, I think in the back of his mind, he thinks Garnacho can't really have an impact yet from starting. So I think he'll maybe stick with Martial, try and get to 60 minutes. Hopefully, we're still in the game and chuck on Garnacho. Any season ticket holders that qualified for the FA Cup final, results come out tomorrow morning. I obviously put in my application, but now I'm kind of thinking I wouldn't mind watching it from home either. But hey, who knows? Who knows? We might put in a dogged performance and get a last-minute winner rather. But yeah, that is all from us today. Thank you for everyone that's tuned in. As mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you guys are listening back on the podcast platforms, do subscribe. And again, if you're viewing this back on YouTube, do leave comments. We will reply. But thank you, gents, again for joining us. We'll be here same time next week and look forward to catching up with you guys then. Okay, take care.